It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Good day and welcome to the program. It is Countywide. Brad Miller with you. Special Countywide today. First up, we're going to be a tiny bit longer today than many of our Countywide programs, and that's for a very good reason. Going to talk about Yavapai College and specifically the recently adopted 10-year master plan. There's some questions, some concern from some citizens about how the master plan will roll out, particularly in how the college is going to divvy up and partition certain costs and expenses and projects and those kinds of things. It's always a big undertaking, no matter what projects there are and what school or other public entity it might be involved. So there's a lot going on, and we're going to try to resolve some of those issues today, at least in your minds, you, the listener and the viewer, about what is happening so that you'll be informed and know the questions to ask and the topics to visit as this process kind of carries along. We'll do basically kind of two segments today. In our first, Bob Oliphant. Bob is a former Yavapai College District Governing Board member. Bob, hello.
Yes, hello.
Good to have you come in studio. And Ruth Wicks, retired educator, very involved in education issues to this day, though retired how long ago?
Ooh.
More than you want to say, but never slowing down even for a minute. Ruth, also a guidance counselor and very involved in, as we said, education issues. So hello to you.
Hello to you.
Good to have you back in studio.
Thank you.
We're going to go and take a quick break right off the bat today. And when we come back, we'll spend a good piece of time with our first two guests. Later in the program, Dr. Penny Wills, the president of Yavapai College, will join us, as will current board member Harold Arrington. And they'll talk about the 10-year master plan from the perspective of the plan that has indeed been approved by the board. It's a short break, a special Countywide, back right after this.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. That ember can ignite and destroy your home or community. You can't control where that ember will land. Only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how you can help protect your community from wildfires.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Look at me. Hey.
Raymond, look at Mommy.
Maybe the light hurts his eyes.
Maybe she's just not hungry. Maybe he can't hear us. Maybe we're not stimulating him enough. Maybe it's a phase.
Avoiding eye contact is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
We welcome you back to the program. Again, I'm Brad Miller. It is Countywide, a special edition of Countywide today, and our guests here for our first segment as we talk about the 10-year master plan with Yavapai College, Ruth Wicks and Bob Oliphant. Let's get right to it. I want to ask a couple of basic questions up front, if I can, here at first. when we talk about Yavapai College, everybody has a stake, and I don't know if we all kind of think of it. And what I mean by that, and correct me please if I'm wrong, whether you've ever gone to Yavapai College, attended a class or a full, kind of load, as it were, whether you've ever done that or had a son or daughter done it, or a grandson or granddaughter, as taxpayers in Yavapai County, Bob, it's true, isn't it, that we all have a stake in at least that sense, if not a deeper one.
Right, we do. We have a big stake in Yavapai County. The college is supported primarily by county property taxes.
Okay. That was my first question.
That's
you
right.
got right to it. How is the college funded?
Right. The funding is pretty straightforward. Let's take a $56 million budget, which is close to what the 2013 budget was. $45 million of that $56 million comes directly from taxpayers here in the county.
Okay.
There's a state appropriation of about $950,000, sales tax of $500,000. Tuition and fees will add, $8.6 million to that. And then there is an additional amount of money that comes through grants, not through grants, but through the foundation. Direct contributions come to the foundation, gifts like that. But without any question, the vast bulk of the support, the financial support for this community college comes directly from the pockets of the taxpayers of the county.
It's, in a way, Ruth, we all get a bill, all of us who are taxpayers.
Right, and I think most
get a bill every year.
Right, and I think most people don't realize that they pay for their grade school and they pay for their high school, but we also pay for our community college. And the community college is unique in the fact that they can raise money. Unlike the grade school and the high school, they're sort of at the mercy of the state and the local tax base. They can't change that rate of tax as...
Mingus School Board can't raise taxes.
No.
Prescott High Board can't raise taxes.
Exactly. But Yavapai College's board, which they have 5 members on that board, can vote to change the rate of the taxes, our taxes on our property.
Gotcha.
Plus, they have other ability to raise tuition. So through those two things, over the years, they have managed, despite the severe cuts by the state, have managed to maintain their present full, I don't know what you call it here, the total revenue each year, despite the loss of $4 million from the state for their...
And that's something that's followed any school district, gosh, almost in the country, certainly in our state, where we felt that. So that story, I think a lot of us are going to be familiar with. The dollars and cents of it, the specifics are going to change. But certainly nobody needs, I think, to be told again that we're all having that, and certainly Yavapai College is going to feel that as well. Well, and that just gets loaded on top of it all.
Right, and it's made it nice for the college having those abilities to weather this very severe storm.
Isn't tuition typically, if any college, let's use Yavapai College as an example, were to be funded completely by tuition, nobody could afford to go.
Yeah.
Same as with almost any institution of a similar size and nature. Okay, so that I think is something that I think people maybe don't quite understand. Now let's talk about the 10-year plan. Now this was approved recently by the Yavapai College board. Okay, in December. Bob, as a former board member, you were not pleased with the direction that was going to prior to that vote, or were you a board member when that vote was taken?
I was a board member when that vote was taken.
Okay.
I dissented from that vote.
Okay. Yes. You didn't like it?
I found it to be almost unconscionable in terms of the people here in the Verde Valley. I'll be honest about it, I was shocked. I was just shocked. 97% of the capital development over the next 10 years, according to the information that they provided us, was going directly to Prescott and Prescott Valley. In addition to that, they're moving a portion of the nursing program. The nursing program is really a major signature program over here in the valley.
Right.
A portion of that was moving to the new $45 million campus that they intend to build on an 80-acre plot in Prescott Valley. I just felt it was going way too far, way overboard. Way overboard. We're struggling desperately over here in many respects, in my judgment. So.
Again, for the uninitiated, very quickly, Yavapai College is sprawling across many corners of Yavapai County, including Clarkdale for the Verde Valley, Sedona, campus, correct?
Right.
And then in Prescott, we've got, do we call Prescott the main campus?
Prescott is Prescott, right. They have 100 or 102 acres over there, 32 buildings, all the accoutrements you would want for a small college, in fact. Major championship athletic teams.
Right. Pool, tennis courts.
Tennis courts. Performing arts theater that seats over 1,000 people. It's a big operation over there.
Let's be clear then, because a question that I thought of at first, and just kind of studying education to a tiny degree, you think about, well, if it's a bigger operation, it costs more over there. We're talking about the master plan. Operational costs are not, this is a capital plan, a capital improvements plan basically, right?
That's right.
Okay, so salaries, those kinds of things aren't part of this.
That's correct.
And not part of the disparity that were unhappy about.
That's correct.
Leading up to the board vote, I don't know what point in the process you kind of wrung your hands together, but there had certainly, prior to the vote and the adoption of the master plan, discussion. I don't know what input, if any, the public brought forward to that, but as that process went along, did you feel it slipping through your hands and your position?
I felt that the plan was presented to the board for the first time in November of 2014 formally, and then it was approved 30 days later in December.
Okay, fairly quick.
I felt there was simply no significant investigation and discussion of that plan by the board. I was disappointed.
Okay.
But more than that, I was very concerned that the college had not done outreach to people in the Verde Valley. They had not done that. They now have admitted they didn't do that.
Right.
Marketing.
I mean, it was shocking.
Yeah, well, your disappointment is clear even today. Ruth, you've been around this business for a long time, education, and you said a word there, you whispered almost marketing.
Yes.
And 20 years ago, marketing wasn't kind of part of it, maybe at the collegiate level, but not in kind of primary, secondary education, or, you know, and now it is. So that's a reality. But we also, all of us, many of us have had things happen where a city council or whatever will do something, we'll say, well, and we didn't know, or we didn't attend, or we didn't.
I was fortunate. I got to attend 2 meetings prior to the vote. I was there when the vote was taken, and I had not seen it, the master plan in writing, until that day that they voted on it. But I had gone and talked to them about that if they would do such a plan, that it was going to impact a great many of our people here in the Valley. And I indicated that both Cottonwood-Oak Creek School District has reduced and free lunch program like all the grade schools and high schools do. And that indicates a federal standard of at poverty or below poverty level.
Right.
All right. Cottonwood-Oak Creek Schools is at 73%. Beaver Creek School District's at 93%. So we have a large group of very, very at poverty or below poverty groups of people. They're least likely to be able to go, travel, have time, have money, have dependable transportation to actually go over there and get training for a job. And as we know, the education is an economic driver in our community.
Sure.
And, you know, so it was so worrisome, and I really talked to them 2 times, and even talked about a specific student, thinking that they would respond to a face. I mean, I didn't have the student there, and it did a little good to no good. And
let me
go ahead. Add for a second. Right, Ruth is talking about the reason we have community colleges.
Yes,
they provide local access, not driving 100, 150 miles round trip. They really were intended for local consumption. The centralization that has occurred over the past 10 years on the other side of the mountain is taking away that local access. They're replacing it, they say, with dual education, that is high schools, dual enrollment in high schools. High school students can take some college courses, and with online education, which everyone realizes is good for some people, bad for other people. But the major point is there's so much centralization that local access is just leaving. And I should add, they were intending to sell Sedona's campus, and of course they're selling the Paulding Chino Valley campus.
If I understand, part of this plan will make it such, I think I'm kind of repeating what you're saying or generalizing what you're saying. Part of this master plan will require changes such that some students will be required, if they choose to continue or take on a certain program or certain elements of a program, will be required to travel, which may be prohibitive to some students or many students, to Prescott Valley, Prescott, and what have you. That's what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, it'll take away that local thing that Bob...
Yeah, and
okay.
as a high school counselor, I always, and the kids out there that have had me for a number of years, well, 80% of all jobs require additional training or education beyond high school.
Sure.
So by denying them that access of affordable and accessible classes, they're condemning them to poverty the rest of their life. I mean, it's sad.
It's serious business.
It is very serious business.
Let me add.
Go ahead.
Let me answer. In the vocational training area, one of the things this valley needs is a sophisticated vocational training school. They have built just such a school in SeaTech over on the other side of the mountain. That's a part of that campus.
Right. Beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is sophisticated. It is wonderful. High school students over there can take programs in that facility. High school students over here cannot. And then if you're a person unemployed or part-timer or whatever in Sedona, you're going to do a round trip of 100, 150 miles every day to attend it. It's a major problem, never addressed other than to suggest we're going to talk with the vocational people over here.
What is kind of driving this? What percentage, if I can ask you this, is this population-based? There's more folks over there, so that's why some of these amenities are going to go there rather than here. Say there's a very, very expensive piece of lab equipment. I don't know what it might be, but the college can only afford one such item. Well, we can't afford one for both sides, so we shouldn't have any. Well, we can afford one, let's put it. How do those decisions get made? Through the board, but how?
Those decisions are made on the basis of, they explain them on the basis of population and the basis of there's more students attending classes over there.
Okay.
That's their explanation.
Okay.
We would say you've taken away programs from this side of the mountain.
Right.
So the attendance has gone down, 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 and it's dropped dramatically.
Have there been... I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was going to say, if you got one piece of equipment, how about putting it over here? We need economic development. These community colleges are economic engines for your community. They understand that in Prescott, and they've got a big economic engine over there.
Yeah.
We have 80 acres here. They could put that allied health school, and we have a hospital that has supported these programs for over 20 years, unlike the hospital in the Prescott area.
Right.
So, you know, it'd be a lot cheaper to put the Allied Health School right here in Cottonwood, Clarkdale area.
Sure. Is there a mechanism, or what is the mechanism for the board to gauge demand? Was that part of the factor? I mean, when some of these decisions were made and the numbers you're talking about,
yes.
How does that outside public input, which doesn't sound like there was tremendous public input before this vote was taken?
They simply look at the full-time student equivalent on the various campuses as one measure of demand, and the what we call footsie has been dramatically dropping on the Verde campus, on Sedona, on the Prescott campus itself. In fact, over the last 3 to 5 years, the enrollment at the college has remained pretty flat. What has happened is that now we have approximately 37% of all students taking courses either online or in the dual enrollment program. So the need, if you really step back and look at the need for all this building they're talking about, can't be justified. The need for a $45 million campus with the enrollment flat for years cannot be justified in the bigger picture.
At the top of the show, I said we're not going to resolve issues today, and we know that. But I do hope we've got about a minute left, and in just a second, I'm going to ask you about potential solutions or perhaps what direction you'd like to see go. You've already indicated a little bit of that, but what we do hope is that our listeners and viewers will take a moment and think about this. Again, whether you've never attended Yavapai College or not have a family member that does or will, you're a taxpayer. It is your business. Get involved, find out more, learn what is happening and what you think would happen. There's a lot more to come. This institution's been around a long time, and God bless, will continue to be. But there's work that needs to be done, just like everything. With about a minute, what's next, Ruth? What do you want to see happen? What's the solution?
Well, it's exciting because we see by the numbers that we could easily have an independent administrative campus right here that we would run, and we would submit a budget to Yavapai College and create our own college here and run it ourselves, which they do in Maricopa County. It would be very similar to like Scottsdale Community, Mesa Community. So we're working with an ad hoc committee. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Is that right? So the ball is...
well, yes, we have
just started to roll on this.
Yes, we've created a valley-wide group of people, committee, that has met and organized, and we are going to be approaching the college. Our view is to find a cooperative way of giving us control of the community colleges here in the Verde Valley. Let us operate them cooperatively. Let us budget them cooperatively.
All right.
That's the approach we want to take.
You're advocating for stronger local representation.
Much stronger local representation.
Guys,
yes.
It seems like a whirlwind, and it is.
It is,
not the issue, but our time on the program. I really appreciate it. It's food for thought. It's not a solution, nor will our second half be, as again, we'll talk about these issues. We'll talk with a couple of folks, a board member and the college president from Yavapai College. Ruth, you said 300-9270. If folks see or hear the program and have a question, I think it's your number.
That's correct.
You can contact Ruth Wicks, our guest, along with Bob Oliphant today. Thank you, folks, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your involvement in the community and in educational matters. We'll take a short break. Part 2 of our special countywide continues right after this.
Ronnie had huge aspirations.
He knew he could get pills in the community.
He found his body in an apartment in Telford.
I never thought my son would take prescription drugs without a prescription.
Secure your medications and talk with your kids. Visit drugfree.org.
Wake the sun, tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
I would steal pills from my friend's mom.
We talk about all the common drugs, but never prescription medication.
I was addicted to pills.
Had I more knowledge, I would have done things differently.
Secure your medications and talk with your kids. Visit drugfree.org.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. That ember can ignite and destroy your home or community. You can't control where that ember will land. Only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how you can help protect your community from wildfires.
We welcome you back to the program. Again, I'm Brad Miller. It's a special county-wide, tiny bit longer today than most of our shows because we have a very big topic that we're trying to get our heads around. And as with our first segment, I don't know that we're going to find solutions because this is a big issue. Public education is and should be something that needs a lot of discussion, a lot of decision making, and that will continue here in our second half. Joining us, as we announced at the top of the show, Dr. Penny Wills is the president of Yavapai College, and hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good to see you again. Glad to have you in studio. Harold Harrington is a governing board member with Yavapai College and have done that for some time.
15 years.
15 years now. So we welcome Harold Harrington and Dr. Penny Wills into our studio. Thanks for coming in. I know you're familiar with our first guest, Mr. Oliphant and Ms. Wicks, and they kind of gave us a very brief overview on how Yavapai College is funded. So I think we've touched that for our listeners and viewers' sakes. I don't want to paraphrase, or I will paraphrase. I don't want to kind of put words in their mouths, but they voiced a concern over the 10-year master plan that was adopted late last year, and they perceive a real kind of disparity, specifically kind of geographically speaking, between that which we would call the Prescott side, the various buildings and campuses on the Prescott area, and those of the Verde Valley side. You're nodding your head. I know you know all of this. You guys have been in all the board meetings. But do you understand, Penny, where their concern is? When I say they, I mean our earlier guests, and what that kind of perceived disparity, where that comes from?
Yeah, I understand it, Brad, to a point.
Okay.
Yavapai College is much more than buildings.
Sure.
Very much more. And something that I'm very, very proud of, especially as we look at the Verde Valley campus, is what is offered there to our citizens. And the programs, the services, et cetera, and how we've changed people's lives. You know, just as you look at that, and also, as you mentioned, a taxpayer, and I'm glad we're not going to get into numbers because that gets people a little nervous, et cetera. But as you look at that, a couple years ago, yes, we have improved that campus to top rate status, et cetera, and it can grow. So as a taxpayer, why would we go ahead and, you know, add more money when we have an existing fine quality facilities that can handle the growth? If there's more growth, hey, this will be wonderful. So it's the enrollment that we look at and the type of program.
Let me expand on that a tiny bit, because it is part of the discussion I wanted to get to with our first guest that we didn't. Previously, I think in the prior decade's master plan, there was a fair amount of building of bricks and mortar in the Yavapai, or rather on the Verde campus. Is that right?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. You would know about that because you were on the board at the time. Right?
Yeah, well, we've done quite in the master plan previous to this one. We did build several buildings over there, and then just the last 3 years, we've spent about $20 million on that campus.
Okay.
So our intent was at that time to get that campus ready for the next 10 years.
Sure.
And we have it now. We have room to grow for the next 10 years on this campus unless enrollment takes off, and then we'll
That's
do
a
more.
nice problem to have.
Yeah, that's the kind of problem we'd love to have.
Well, briefly, how is enrollment's not been taking off? And I think that's, or
They're doing
what?
fine.
Or
They're
what?
increasing.
Yeah, okay.
They're increasing, as well as the programs that are new. And let me just mention that here. The Southwest Wine Center, those programs with the viticulture and enology are full. Next week, I go down to further solidify the new programs coming in from University of Arizona. We just signed another articulation agreement with the major university that's all going to benefit that, and so it's moving. It's going in the right direction, and we have very strong relationships with our high schools.
There is a number I want to ask you about, because one of the numbers that did come up in our first segment was 97%. When we talk about this 10-year master plan of 130.
That is a very ballpark figure.
Okay,
very
I understand,
ballpark.
but
we needed to give something to our board to say, wow, how do we do the planning at maybe 40, 50,000 feet?
Right.
Do we look at a geo bond? Do we not? And we know, and we have to plan for that. So we are planning not to do a bond levy. We can accommodate that within, but these are just ballparks. Let me just show you one in phase 1 that we have of the projects that are right now on the bubble to look at. Those programs already are lower in cost than what we estimated. Also, we're looking at grants, partnerships, et cetera. So,
well, these elements are true of any 10-year master plan for almost any institution. Okay, so we understand that, I think.
Yeah.
The 97% thing, because that came up. I've heard that number in other media sources and whatnot, and I did hear it in our first segment. Is that right, though, from where we stand right now? Today's okay. What would be more?
Okay. You have to look at what's all involved in that whole plan over the next 10 years, where it's a very fluid plan, as we've mentioned. And the plan is to be responsive to the communities. And half of that money is involved in the Allied Health Center of Excellence, which I'll be glad to talk about.
That's the big piece of this whole darn deal, sure.
Yes,
okay.
And that is there. So when you take that part out, the figures look very different.
Okay.
And then when you factor in, again, the facilities, from a taxpayer standpoint, would you want us to replicate things or duplicate things when they're not needed? We have the capacity to grow, and as we've said, we will be more than happy to build if we are out of space. But we're not out of space. I'm
going to ask you a question, same thing I asked our guests in our first half. And you kind of alluded to this already. If whatever it is, there is, say, a big piece of equipment that's needed, that there's the demand for Yavapai College to have this, whatever it may be. You can't afford one for each side. It's not practical or cost effective and so on. You've got to make a decision on where it should go. How is that decision arrived at? We can afford one project X, but not two or whatever. How do you...
whether it's a program, whether it's a piece of equipment, et cetera, where the population is, et cetera. You look at everything and where the needs of those communities are. Okay. We would not build the Southwest Wine Center on the other side of the mountain.
Sure.
They don't get, well, sorry, for, you know, how would I say, citizens there. The wine industry is not that critical to that part. It's very critical here. And the Southwest Wine Center is also something that is it's an excellent example of how a plan is fluid. If you look back at our 2000-2004 master plan, there was no Southwest Wine Center.
Right.
And we've adapted to that, worked with it, and now we feel very committed to our communities, and now we have it. And the opening will be in August, and I hope that everybody will come to that. But that will serve the whole wine industry here that's so critical for the Verde Valley.
Another of the issues seems to be simply, and we've had this, I've heard county supervisors, I don't know if they've ever officially taken it up, but the issue has certainly come up with folks about this gorgeous, wonderful thing that we call Mingus Mountain. And it does pose challenges. And we all seem to kind of know that. And I don't know that there are any kind of dramatic cultural differences one side of the mountain to the other. But there is that thing, and there is that geography. And our guests in the first half kind of talked about, all of that being said, that it's going to create a hardship because so much more over time, you know, as it lays now with a fluid plan, may create a demand, whereas folks who live in this area are going to need to get to the Prescott area to be able to complete their educations or even take up their education.
I think we need to look at where the population is and has been. And Yavapai College didn't cause that. Now, we also have an excellent mining program for the whole state, and I've asked the instructors if they can drill something right through Mingus Mountain to make this a lot easier for everybody, and so far they haven't complied.
The dynamite cost alone.
Yes, but I'm looking at Verde. And this is my favorite place here, to look at that. I mean, it's a rural area, and the uniqueness, the identity of our small communities around here is something to be very treasured. Now, how do we meet their needs is a different situation, different conversation rather, than, oh my word, why does Prescott get it and we don't? No, I'm very proud to be in a rural area, and the needs are very different. How do we meet that? Thank heavens distance education has come along. That's the real change. Broadband, I'm on the VV Rio board to be able to, and we're advocating very strongly for broadband to come right on and be in Clarkdale and Cottonwood. It would set us apart a lot in the state. Looking at how we do telemedicine, all these things. The situations are different, but how do we meet their needs?
Right.
So,
online education, we all know about it. 10 years ago it was there, but hardly 20 years ago, it kind of sort of wasn't there. Certainly not like it is today. How does that factor in? You started on it, but how is that going to factor, you know, in what we've got planned here? Is that part of why some of this is shaped the way it is?
It is.
And when I say this, the listeners and viewers, I am referring to the 10-year master plan, which is at the core of the whole discussion.
It very much was a factor. It was a factor all the way through. 1/3 of our population now, our student enrollment, is online. And what I want the listeners to hear is that Yavapai College takes that very seriously. A number of institutions will do it because it's more cost efficient, et cetera, but they don't measure the effectiveness. We have. And for 3 years, we studied that and had face-to-face class with an online class, the same class, taught by the same professor.
Right.
And we studied it, and my commitment from the very beginning of that was, if we don't show rigor, quality, et cetera, we aren't going to continue it.
Sure.
And it showed it. And so the classes that a student or anyone can go ahead and get from Yavapai College, whether they're face-to-face, online, or a hybrid, are quality.
Okay. And that gets us back and forth over and under and around Mingus Mountain faster than anything.
Yes.
Do you get what the folks that we had, our guests earlier, Ms. Wicks and Mr. Oliphant, where their concern or the perception comes from? It sounds to me you kind of disagree with it, or where it's ended up. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
No.
But do you...
I get it, but yet at the same time, here's how I feel. And here, Mr. Oliphant was on our board, cetera. He made some decisions. I'm a big one to say, hey, if I don't like something, I will work within the system to get it changed.
Yeah.
I will represent that. I will talk about that. That's not the decision he made.
Chose a different way.
Yeah.
What was kind of public or community input prior? I don't know what the process is for sure about. Before this was voted on, it wasn't voted on at the first meeting where it was discussed.
No.
There was how much of a public process and what kind of feedback
I'm
did you
glad
get?
you bring that up, because there's some things here as far as looking at history and past practice. Everything is fine, and I think, Harold, you would agree with this, that the board meetings, we get very little input, except at our last one in Sedona. That one we had an hour. Thank heavens. And so knowing that, but also knowing that this process of the master plan went over 8 to 10 months, and we had umpteen public meetings, but we were also concerned that some were attended, some were not, and everything. So when things generally in our society overall in America, when things are going pretty well, okay, somebody else. But when I'm concerned, I'm going to come out. And so what we had planned already was, looking at this, we would take it to the board at the first reading, get their reaction a little bit to it. Second meeting, ask them if they wanted to go ahead and approve, disapprove, etc. They gave their blessing to the concept of a plan, the plan. And then we are already planning and had planned to go out to meet with umpteen groups across the county to say, here's the plan, now tell us what you need. And we've labeled it. It's why, Yavapai College values. We value your input. Now we've got some people's attention, possibly a lot of attention, but that's good. People are now telling us, and we want the conversation to be, what do you need? How do we go ahead and serve you?
And so let's do that.
Yeah.
You and I have been I've been to a million city council, more than I've been care to talk about it in a lengthy career in radio and whatnot. And I've seen this play out many, many times. And what I mean is that an issue will come along, and very often, once it's approved, then it starts to get attention, cart, horse,
so you understand,
and which order. I think we've all seen that, and many of our public will also see it. But it kind of doesn't stop there that there is that concern, or whether it's a few or many. Certainly, Yavapai College's tradition of having open ears, our hearts and minds, will want to address that. One of the things that did come up with Bob Oliphant and Ruth Wicks in our first half was a suggestion of perhaps, and I'm not sure I'm going to phrase this the right way, but toward the goal of having better representation for the Verde Valley and for Prescott area at Yavapai College, having, I think, separate boards, or I'm a little unclear. I hope I'm not saying it incorrectly, but basically some kind of a stronger or at least better or more apparent mechanism, whereas there can be a bit more input. You're shaking your head. What do you?
Our board. I should actually let Harold speak to that, because you represent, or not represent, you are the board, but we mirror the supervisors.
Ruth Wicks suggested Maricopa County has
I can talk to you about Maricopa.
Okay. I'm unfamiliar with it. You're the educators, so.
What they're suggesting.
That's not a model?
I think one of the things that I've heard expressed about this issue is the way the board is structured at Yavapai College is, we are elected in districts, but we raise our hand in the air and swear to represent all the citizens of Yavapai County.
Sure.
Now, that means that the people on that side of the valley and this side, or that side of the mountain and this side of the mountain, I have to represent them as the best I can, even though I'm elected from a district over on this side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And of course, I have individual interests over here that I bring to the college and bring to the board, my perspectives. But my responsibility is to try to get the best educational opportunities on the ground for every citizen in this county that we possibly can.
Right.
Now, if you split the county, that responsibility changes. I don't understand the premise of hiring a bunch of new administrators and folks to run a separate district, how that would be effective or efficient for taxpayers, but I'm willing to hear it. I think the bottom line is, Bob and Ruth and us at the college have the same objectives.
Yeah.
We all want to get the best education we can for the citizens of Yavapai County. We have different ways of looking at things, and we have different ways of approaching things. But I think the process that we're embarked on now of saying, okay, now we kind of got a plan to talk about. Let's go out and get public input and really figure out how to flesh this out and make it work for all of us is what we need to do.
Okay.
And I really appreciate the input we're getting. I appreciate the attention we're getting. We do this every year at the budget.
Right.
We go through the budget process. We have meetings. Then we pass a budget, and we get lots of input. It's the same process. Everybody's busy, right? Everybody has a lot to do.
I know you're a board member, as a college president. And all, and it happens many, many times, and that's kind of human nature for those kinds of things to occur.
I could just mention about Maricopa.
Real quick, we're out of time, but please do. Go ahead.
Maricopa, we have that model already here, which is they think, okay, 10 separate colleges. Okay, if we follow, they all report to a district office. They all report to one board and one chancellor. And so we have 2 comprehensive campuses. We have one board, one president. So it's there. Now, the difference would be, and it would be a big loss, is that if we went fully to that model and created a new campus, even though it would be against state statutes all the way through, if that was that, then they would not have an accredited campus here.
Okay.
The faculty would not be here. The strength of our faculty, the programs would not be here. They'd have to start from zero. And that's not what we want to do.
Behind every solution can be a roadblock, no matter where your perspective is or where you're at. Sure.
Yeah.
We get that. Guys, I told you we weren't going to solve this problem on this show today. I tremendously appreciate the two of you coming and spending time, as with our earlier guests. There's a lot to talk about, and that's the message that I hope that we get out to our viewers and our listeners today. Ask questions, no matter what the topic is. Yavapai College has been an outstanding and upstanding institution in our county for years. Decades, and will continue to be. Your input's the part that really kind of makes it hum, though, and this is a kind of an issue that you can be and should be involved in, no matter what your perspective is. Thank you very much, Dr. Penny Wills, President of Yavapai College, and Board Member Harold Harrington. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good talking to the two of you. All right, thanks much. It's our special countywide. We thank you, too, for being part of it. I'm Brad Miller, and we'll see you next time.